Harvard Business School doesn't usually write case studies about footballers, but they made an exception for Thomas Müller because his career breaks a lot of people's assumptions about what greatness is supposed to look like. No Mbappé speed, no Messi-style dribbling, no Ronaldo physique, and yet he's won more than almost anyone in his era, outsmarted elite defenses for nearly 2 decades, and quietly became one of the most influential leaders in a locker room full of superstars. This is the Müller Mystery, and the deeper you go, the more it feels like a masterclass in leadership. Thomas Müller is basically synonymous with Munich, but his story starts about 30 miles outside the city, in a small Bavarian village called Pale. It's the kind of place where life moves slow, everyone knows everyone, and if you're a kid with energy, football becomes the obvious outlet. Müller fell in love with the game early, but this isn't the classic child prodigy who looks like a superstar at 12 story. He wasn't the strongest, he wasn't the fastest, and he didn't have that flashy, highlight reel skill set that makes scouts fall in love instantly. But in 2000, Bayern Munich brought him into their academy anyway, and it turned into one of the smartest long-term bets a club has ever made. He reached the first team as a teenager, made his pro debut in 2008, and not long after that, he became the guy you couldn't really take out of the lineup. Bayern coach Louis van Gaal famously summed it up with a line that became a whole identity: Müller always plays. And it wasn't exaggeration. Müller became Bayern's all-time appearance leader, 756 matches in the Bayern first team, with 250 goals and 276 assists credited in his Bayern numbers in widely cited stats databases. In an era where one-club careers are almost extinct, he gave Bayern something even rarer: loyalty and consistency. Let's talk numbers, because with Müller, they don't look real. At Bayern alone, that production is ridiculous for a player who was never marketed as the main superstar. Goals, assists, endless off-ball work, and the kind of availability coaches dream about. In the Champions League, he reached 163 appearances, all for Bayern, a record for most Champions League games for a single club, and he finished with 111 Champions League wins, second only to Cristiano Ronaldo, plus 57 goals in the competition. And then there's the trophies. Müller left Bayern at the end of the 2024-25 season after 25 years with the club, already one of the most decorated players in football history. After that, he didn't just fade into retirement. In 2025, he added to his collection again, with reporting in Germany noting he reached 35 career trophies, becoming the most decorated German player, now with Vancouver Whitecaps adding silverware to the story. So the obvious question becomes, how does someone who never looked like the perfect modern footballer end up with a career like that? This is where Harvard Business School comes in. HBS published a case focused on Müller's career, his skills, and how he might apply what he learned to whatever comes next. And what's interesting is that the Müller advantage isn't framed as only football talent. It's a mix of on-field intelligence and off-field leadership traits that translate to basically any high-performance environment. Before we get to the soft skills, you have to understand the on-field superpower that made everything else possible. Müller doesn't play like a normal star. He doesn't win games by bullying defenders physically or by pulling off 10 dribbles in a row. His football looks awkward to people who are used to cleaner, more aesthetic styles. But it's not random, it's deliberate. Müller's signature concept is Raumdeuter, usually translated as space interpreter. It's basically a fancy way of saying he sees the game like a chess player. He reads where the space will open up before it opens. He senses the second when a defender loses track. He arrives at the exact moment chaos turns into an opportunity. And because he's already there, the finish looks easy. Tap in, simple pass, one touch, goal. That's why he's been elite for so long. He's not trying to be the most athletic guy on the pitch. He's trying to be the fastest thinker on the pitch. And when your brain is a step ahead, your legs don't have to win every race. It also explains why he's been undervalued by casual fans at times. His highlights don't always look spectacular, but coaches love players who make the team function, and trophy teams are built on that kind of value. Still, football IQ alone doesn't explain a near two-decade run at the very top. This is where Müller's business school profile comes in. At Bayern, managers came and went. Systems changed. Entire squads were rebuilt around him. Superstars arrived. Superstars left. A lot of players struggle with that. They get benched once, feel disrespected, lose confidence, and start thinking about the exit. Or they can't adapt when their role shifts. Müller did the opposite. The way his career reads is like someone who starts every season with one question: where do I help the team the most right now? Sometimes that meant playing closer to goal. Sometimes it meant drifting wide. Sometimes it meant pressing like a maniac and creating space for everyone else. Sometimes it meant being the connector, the guy who turns good attacks into great attacks by making the right movement at the right time. And the resilience piece matters too. Müller's game is full of actions that don't show up as goals or assists. Press, sprint, drag a defender, open a lane, reset, do it again. Even if it doesn't pay off on the first try, he keeps going. That mentality is a big reason coaches trust him. And it's also why his next chapter made sense. After leaving Bayern, Müller did something he'd never done before. He joined a new club, a new culture, a new league, and a new locker room, with MLS reports noting Vancouver exercised a contract option for 2026, keeping him as a major piece going forward. Unique skill set, absolutely. Durable mindset, clearly. But there's one more ingredient that people overlook. One of the most consistent things you hear about Müller is his personality. He's been called Radio Müller because he talks, jokes, comments, and keeps the room alive. And that sounds like a small thing, until you realize how much elite teams depend on emotional control. A locker room needs somebody who can make new signings feel comfortable, keep young players from panicking, break tension before big matches, lift the group when things get heavy. That kind of presence is leadership, even when it doesn't look like the stereotypical captain yelling speeches thing. And it's also why he's been a media favorite and a fan favorite for so long. The vibe is always the same: honest, grounded, not trying to act like a superhero, just a guy who understands the moment and knows how to handle it. Müller's still active, still productive, and still valuable. And if you're reading the leadership angle, the future is wide open. He could go into media, he could go into coaching, he could go into executive work. And given that Harvard's case study explicitly frames his strengths as transferable skills, it wouldn't be surprising to eventually see him in a serious decision-making role. People around German football have floated that idea for years, that he's built for leadership beyond the pitch. Whether it happens sooner or later, the direction makes sense. So what's the lesson? Thomas Müller has been proving the same point since day one. You don't have to be the most naturally gifted player in the world to build an all-time career. You have to be the most useful player in the world. The guy who keeps solving problems for the team, year after year, no matter who the coach is, no matter what the system is, no matter who gets signed. In a football culture that worships individual brilliance, Müller became a legend by mastering something rarer: the art of making everyone else better. And honestly, in sports and in life, that's what real greatness usually looks like.